If anybody is watching from home, I want to make it clear, and I think most members of this committee would probably agree to the same thing, that this wearing a mask is a good idea. And I want to make it clear that the discussions we're going to have today on these emergency regulations are not necessarily about policy, but about process. And so I think it's important when we look at this regulation, one could argue that it is an emergency just due to the fact that we're concerned about reducing an imminent threat to public health or safety. And so I think from that angle, it's correct. But in this regulation, particularly in Section 3, it's worth noting that there is no due process for individuals, because in this, my concern is that the Cabinet does not have statutory authority to set penalties for individuals. I think KRS 214.020 and 214.990 talk about enforcement and penalty measures, but it talks about people that violate quarantine or isolation orders, or a public or private conveyance, including watercraft, I think is what the wording is used there. But this regulation imposes fines on individuals. It actually also references civil and criminal penalties. And I'm concerned about due process, because if I get a speeding ticket, I know I go before a judge to argue these things. And in this situation, there's no way for an individual to defend themselves or have any process. They don't know what to do. Do they go before the court? Do they go before the Cabinet? There's a requirement for people to divulge private medical information. Several concerns in that regard. And there's also, I'm going to make another comment here to let you guys kind of respond to these, is that there's a requirement this is effective for 30 days. And I think the law is pretty clear in Chapter 13A that it does not provide for a process for an emergency regulation to sunset and then be subject to renewal after 30 days. The governor has expressed that yesterday, that he plans on renewing an emergency regulation, which I don't think is allowed by law. And that makes this problematic. And I think in KRS 13A 190, subparagraph 4, it says that an emergency administrative regulation with the same number or title or governing the same subject matter shall not be filed for a period of 9 months after it has been initially filed. Mr. Secretary, I know I've expressed to you my frustration with this, I think in one of our meetings, that I think this violates due process, and I'm a guy about due process. I'm an immigrant, son of immigrants. I've heard stories my entire life growing up from people from other countries who fled lack of due process, where government came in and said, you're going to do this, and they don't have any means of being able to defend themselves, and this does not allow for this. And I would argue that this is improperly done. And again, I know we're kind of doing a cowboy process here through the administration of not involving other people and doing this on your own. But I think most of us would agree we should be wearing masks. And we want to see, you have the authority to put that out there, and it's going to help get this stuff done. But to start putting in this lack of due process for people is troublesome, and it bothers me. And I would invite you to consult with us, because now the concern is going to be the way this is written. To be able to reorder this, I think is illegal. My recommendation would be to withdraw this, let us work on it, get it to where it's right, and then reissue it with feedback from people from this committee and from the General Assembly. With that, I'll let you all have those discussions and answer those concerns.